Welcome back to Sunrise Idi. Well, yes, we're just following up on the reports that Inter-Religious Council Summit which you just watched and heard. We've got Mr. Dennis Makre, as you may have seen in that welcoming slide. He's a former Assistant Director with the State Security Service. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today on the program. So, nice to do it like this on the other side. You know, well, you heard the report there, the comments of those eminent religious leaders, the Sultan, for instance, asking questions of our security, architecture, intelligence community, of which is, at least you've been there, done that. So what he did ask is this theory about unknown gunmen. Don't we have intelligence? Could you talk to us about some of this? Well, what is it? I mean, those questions that he put out there, I mean, to the layman out there, they will always wonder. There'll always be room for improvement. So tell us, you've heard that report. What do you think of what he said?
Thank you for having me. Of course, what all they said there is very true, because these are the problems of the country that we're facing at this time. You know, I think many people don't understand that the whole country is under siege at this time. We might be pointing fingers at the little symptoms that occur, kidnapping, attacks that are coming up. But there are fundamental problems in the country that need to be solved. And of course, the divisiveness is what is even pulling us apart in this country. There was this survey that was carried out recently by on the cohesion in the country, and you find out that only 37% of Nigerians are patriotic. And that is not good enough, because when we start to have all these different kinds of attitude of where we came from, or whether the herdsmen or whether the bandits are from outside the country, or they are unknown gunmen, or, you know, before it was unknown soldier, now we have unknown gunmen. So it is something that we have to put a finger on. And I think the intelligence community should go ahead and do it, because, you see, when these kind of things happen, people are arrested, nobody is prosecuted, or if they are prosecuted, nobody is jailed. Then it becomes a problem whereby we keep on calling names, you know, or apportioning blames to people of what is going on in the country, while we can solve it ourselves.
You know, yesterday, while we were speaking with the Commissioner for Information in Plateau State, he raised some questions and concerns about security, policing, how he thought that there's room for improvement. And those were the concerns that the people had. And I think still do, because he thinks that all of those things, people internalize them and come to a conclusion and act based on that perception. How do you think the intelligence community should approach some of these things? Is there a challenge with, should they look to changing or improving communication, or is it going to be, well, you have to act and then side by side communicating to the people so that they don't leave with the wrong impression that it appears as though people do things and go scot-free?
Well, one thing I know is that the intelligence community is solid in this country. But I think what impedes them in carrying out some of the jobs they want to do is because of politics, politicians. Because, you see, when you mix politics with security, then it becomes a very big problem. And I think personally that if these agencies are independent on their own, they should be able to do a better job. But when they are under the direction of leaders that are not forthcoming, or who don't think seriously about the whole country as a whole, then we have problems, you know. And then, of course, party politics, and of course ethnicity, divisiveness, whereby there are a lot of disgruntlement all over the place. So I think communication will solve it, but it still comes back to the leaders to bring everybody together to talk about it.
I'm yet to truly understand, when you say politics, is it possible for you to cite examples of where you think that politics may have served as a hindrance, for instance, in bringing, people who are committing heinous crimes to book? Because the politicians are not looking good when these crimes happen, and I want to imagine that, they'll at least, if there's anything that they're interested in the next elections, and they want to be able to say they provided security for the people. So can you cite instances where you think that it is politics and politicians' influence and, roadblocks that have prevented the security agencies from doing what they ought to have done in that instance?
Thank you for that question. You see that when security is being executed, it does not know ethnicity, it does not know religion, it does not know which party you belong to. But here there is this separation whereby you remember when PDP was in power, APC was all over them. And then, of course, when APC comes into power, you find the others all over them. And there is nothing good coming out from the opposition parties. And I think that is in fact unpatriotic, because you find out that when something that is happening, our military are fighting. Instead of everybody to get together and say, okay, let's do this. Let's take care of this problem that we have. Instead, people are reading meanings into it, and it's our party, we would have done better. It was few numbers that were killed when our party was there, and stuff like that. Then, of course, think of what is going on now. We have kids that have been in the custody of kidnappers for so many days and weeks, and the whole country is burning. Instead of us to come together and solve this problem, politicians are busy thinking of 2023. I am worried, because if the country burns down, what is going to be the political practice when it comes to 2023?
Well, I'm just thinking, isn't this just a bit convenient to always say the politicians? Let me use this example or analogy. So imagine a doctor who's meant to operate on a patient, and a politician who owns the hospital or who employed the doctor or surgeon says, you know what, I don't want you to make the incision this way. This is how I want you to do it. Okay, in fact, I want you to even slice the neck and all. A doctor will clearly say, no, I can't do that. It's not my job. My job is to preserve life and not to take life. So if you're a security agent or the head of a security agency, and it's always convenient to say that, well, the politicians are the ones setting the tone. If they tell us to not do this, we will not do this. Don't you think that's, I don't know, it sounds convenient to me. Am I wrong?
Yeah, I think we've discussed this before, and I'm going to repeat it here. That you see, when you have an intelligence agency or the intelligence community itself in a country, what they are supposed to do is to pursue the national interest, follow the national interest, make sure that everything about the national interest is taken care of. But here, I don't think we have a written out national interest. That ask any Nigerian, what is the national interest of Nigeria today? I don't think anybody will give you a definite definition. So we don't have a national interest. And when we don't have a national interest, then how do the intelligence community operate? They will operate from the bosses, because the law that created them says that they are a department of the presidency. The police reports to the president. The DSS reports to the president. So, whatever the president gives out, or the presidency, is the direction you go. And you can see, in fact, if you look at the history of the intelligence community in Nigeria, it has become one where even when General Babangida came into power, they have to dismantle the Nigerian Security Organization. Because at that time, it was alleged that the organization was becoming very, very dangerous. And then, of course, the present president was, the head of state. And the doors of the detention centers of the NSO were thrown open. And then, of course, it became almost a laughing stock at that time. Then, after that president took over, what happened? He used them more than what Buhari used them for. So you find out that because they are created to be an appendage of the presidency, the president at that time or any time will direct. And then that is, of course, different from, because it might be the manifesto. You remember, the presidents are carrying out the manifestos of their party. And that is not the national interest.
Well, these agencies are creations of law, essentially. I don't think security operatives will call the president or the governor or whoever when they're about to make an arrest and say, we need to make an arrest, there's been a crime here. Do we arrest or not? I imagine that doesn't happen. They're a creation of law. The law is clear on how they carry about their duties. So they make arrests, they profile, they interrogate, and do all of that, prosecute and the rest. So these things are clear in law. Okay, when it comes to appointments and some other strategic decisions, yes, you can talk about it at that leadership level. But the law is clear. So are you saying that we don't have men in security agencies that can stand up and stand by the law and say, well, this is what the law says, I'm going to follow the law to the letter?
You are a Nigerian, and have you ever heard that, have you ever heard anything called orders from above? And have you heard the situation where somebody was arrested for certain things, some national crimes, security crimes, and, a call will come to let the person go? It has happened in the history of this country. So you find out that it is not a situation where the security agencies are very free to do what they have to do. But if their allegiance is to the Constitution of Nigeria, then you find out that
you were in service.
They will carry out the national interest.
Did you get the question?
No, I didn't get you. Yes, please.
Did that happen while you were in service?
Oh, okay. Phone calls will come and say that you can let somebody go?
Yes.
Oh, well, yeah, you find out that you have to carry out orders because you are not the top of the organization. Even if you are the top of the organization, you can be, somebody above you will call you and say, okay, we don't want to do it like this, we'll do it like this. So that it's not a matter of it does not happen.
Well, when you talk about security agencies beholding to whoever is the president over time, which you say that's what you have seen. Today, for instance, Governor of Plateau State, Samuel Lalong, says that these kind of things will keep happening unless there is justice. He's the number one security person in his state, chief security officer, as they refer to them by the books. He wants something done. Why can't it be done in that state? For instance, CP doing certain things, following or going by the books. Why can't that be done?
Okay, there are two things here. One, they have this exclusive list and non-exclusive lists. I don't know why those lists exist anyway, because one is federal and the other ones are out of there. But again, you find out that in the states themselves, The governors are supposed to be the chief security officers of their state. And now, some of them will claim that, I don't have the power to do what I want to do because, I don't have the fighting forces. And I think that is not true because I have worked in a state. I've been a member of the State Security Council, and the governor is the chairman of that very council. And when he is the chairman, whatever is discussed there will be carried out by all the agencies that are present. It is not a situation where you say, oh, let me go and talk to my IG before I can carry out what is going on. Because even the IGs or even the DGSSS will expect that director to take a decision according to the State Security Council, then inform the headquarters. So it is a situation where you don't claim that you don't have the powers. After all, the security funds that they give to them every month, what is it used for? It's not just for buying vehicles and then giving to security agents. It's for running the security operations of that state.
I want to ask you, I'm sorry to take you back to the issue of, because we're still around the political class anyway, but some people will argue that isn't this because the security agencies themselves are allowing politics infiltrate their own ranks, that there could be divisions. Some other times it is a lack of coordination amongst the security agencies, maybe some loyal to some, political godfathers and others loyal to other political godfathers. And that is what we're saying manifested in the current security situation which we are experiencing. You don't agree?
You're very correct. It happens all the time. Because when there is a political space, people will tend to align with, let's say there's a governor now. He has policemen and DSS people, posted to him. And we've had situations in this country where during elections, the governor will take these people and go down to the polling booths and do all kinds of things, And at that time, where do you classify the security people? They become partial. And of course, there was even there are situations where if they go for an election, the governor of the state, the governor actually came out to say this, a governor of a state will go ahead and meet the security people and say, hey, do you have accommodation? Do you have you eaten? And he will give them money. Corrupting the security agents. So that by the time this thing starts, their allegiance is shifted. They are human beings. So these are the kinds of things. If you want to do any kind of operations like that, fund them properly. Let them not be partisan. Let them not be attaching or even, looking up to the governor to do anything for them.
Isn't the question now about how we will now make sure that, all the loyalties of our security agents and agencies lie with the Nigerian state? Isn't that the big question? How do we begin? You made reference to that API report, even though it was about the generality of Nigerians. But I'm sure that amongst the generality of Nigerians, there would also be some reflection of our security agencies right in there. Patriotism is not very high as we speak. How do we begin to reinforce and reinstate and put at the center loyalty to the Nigerian state?
First of all, the security agents are Nigerians too. They go to the same market. Things are very hard. The economy is tight and everything. Fine. But importantly, we have to look at a situation where the loyalty of the security agents is very patriotic and very, very aligned to the national interest or the Nigerian constitution. So it is not a matter of where you start to, because you are in the country, after training, any security agent does not have any other choice than to be patriotic. Because I remember, after we finish our own cadet trainings, we are, in fact, if we were alone anywhere and the national anthem is playing, we stand at attention, whether there is somebody or not, or in public or in private. We respect our flag. The national symbols don't mean anything again. So you find out that patriotism, we have a national orientation agency, and I don't think they're orienting anybody towards, that patriotic zeal that everybody has. There are other countries where you go and they are proud to tell you that I'm a US citizen, because he knows if he's kidnapped somewhere in Niger Republic, they will come and get him. But we have people kidnapped in our country, and then we have a problem here. So these are the things that have to be done. I think there is supposed to be a deliberate effort in trying to solve these national issues.
And I think it's important to talk about those deliberate efforts. And come to think of it, we have the state, and the people hand over the reins of affairs of the state to certain individuals to govern the state, and by extension, handing over the instrument of states, which security is one of them, to those people who then wield it in the way they like, sometimes for self-preservation. Perhaps that's why you have all of this. But clearly, all of this conversation points to having strong institutions. And I recall there was a former president in Africa saying, we need to have institutions so strong that even if the devil was in charge, it would be difficult to do evil in power, just to paraphrase. So talking about those solutions, as it were, from a security perspective, if people don't have trust, faith in security agencies to do things according to law, to follow through, process and procedures, then what you have is people taking law into their hands, and clearly that does not work for anyone. So if we were to start this step by step, from level to level, what would you say is the first thing we need to do?
I don't know if you remember, when this particular president was in power the first time as a head of state, there was a very common thing that went on there: war against indiscipline. And I can tell you that people restricted themselves to obeying the law. Whether there is anybody on the street or not, you will hardly find any Nigerian that will go by the roadside and start to urinate. And then, of course, people will queue up at the bus stations. So the fundamental issue is that we Nigerians also have to look inwards at ourselves, because we keep on saying it, na Niger style, or this na Nigeria, or something. That is very derogatory, because we are taking certain things for granted. The rule of law must hold, because we cannot continue behaving anyhow. We go to a stop sign where there is a red light, and you stop, and people behind you are honking and telling you that you must move on, move on. There is nobody, move on. The discipline of, feeling part of society, because we are not wild animals that we can just be running up and down, And then, of course, we have to think seriously of our judicial system, because you see, that is a major part of government that has disappointed Nigerians. How many kidnappers have we arrested? Have the security agencies arrested? Nobody has been prosecuted, or if they've been prosecuted, we don't hear about it. And then, of course, they are still there until one day they will we all forget and they go away.
Well, let me touch on this before we go to break in the next 2 minutes, perhaps come back to it. And when you talk about the judiciary, we've referenced in the Sultan of Sokoto saying the unknown gunmen need to be they need to be known, as it were, and prosecuted, and so people will know who these unknown gunmen are. And I'd like to find out, from the intelligence and security perspective, the tags that are given, the names that are given. So you have unknown gunmen, you have bandits, then you have the terrorists. Sometimes you have kidnappers, different tags thrown around. How does that come to play in the process of prosecution, interrogation, essentially handling a case? So if you hear unknown gunmen, how would security agencies handle it? If you hear bandits, how would you handle it? If you hear terrorists, how will they be handled?
A terrorist like in Boko Haram, a bandit like in Zamfara and Kaduna State, or even another kidnapper like people that were kidnapping in Lagos. All of them are terrorists because what they act is what we are talking about. The act of terrorizing people, of making people to fear. So these are all terrorists, especially the bandits. We don't want to call them bandits or, what they are doing is terrorism. That's what they are doing. So it is we should be very clear about that. And then, of course, address them like that. And if they want to prosecute them. Mention their names. Because there is no reason, just like the Sultan has said, it is high time we know these unknown guys, these unknown elements that are running around in this society, disturbing us, attacking our citadel of military training. These people cannot be unknown, and then we should be able to get them by now.
All right, Mr. Michael, just give us a moment. We'll be back.
Nigerian and Cameroonian officials under one roof to deliberate and transport-border security issues affecting the two countries. It's the 8th time the two countries will be meeting since the establishment of the Cameroon-Nigeria Trans-Border Security Committee in February 2012, aimed at finding lasting solutions to the lingering problem of terrorism, banditry, arms smuggling, among other criminal activities, mostly along their common border areas. The Minister of State for Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Zubairu Dada, says the collaboration between the two countries have been yielding results, but warns that there are still threats and it's not time to let down guard.
Let me strongly advocate that we sustain our bilateral security framework in order to defeat terrorism in the sub-region, particularly with the emergence of terrorist groups such as ISWAP.
We must continue to work in order to meet the objectives assigned to this committee in Article 3. That is, to intensify cooperation with regards to trans-border security between our two countries, evaluate the security situation at our common borders, propose measures which should be so that these issues should be tackled properly.
It's time for the National Security Advisor, Major General Babagana Mungono, to speak, and he makes no haste to warn secessionist groups in Nigeria planning to form alliances with secessionist groups in Cameroon.
Another emerging concern is the attempt by secessionist groups in Nigeria to form alliances with secessionist groups in Cameroon. We will work closely together to ensure that any real or perceived challenge or attempt to form any alliances between secessionist groups in Nigeria and Cameroon are decisively dealt with.
Nigeria and Cameroon shares a common border of about 2,000 kilometers, which makes the relationship between the two countries very germane, especially in the face of rising security threats. Hopefully, in the next 3 days of this meeting, delegates will be able to profile solution to these arrays of security threats which beset development in the two countries. Emperor Simon, Channels Television News.
Social cohesion is all about functionalism. It is the extent to which people in society are bound together, integrated, and share common values. In the context of nationhood, it helps us understand what makes us Nigerians. And that's the reason for this social cohesion dialogue.
If Lord Lugard had foreseen these things, if he had foreseen the rise of a black nation capable by the sheer size and quality of its population by naturally dominate its space. If Lord Lugard had foreseen these things, he would never have amalgamated the North and South to create one country.
This social cohesion survey took into consideration 10 key indicators, among which are identity, in which 49% of Nigerians are disappointed in the country. 26% of Nigerians trust the Buhari administration. 74% of Nigerians believe there are people above the law. 63% of Nigerians score the government poor in its efforts to tackle corruption.
Nigeria has failed to explain its challenges, from Boko Haram to the raging cases of banditry and farmers' elders crisis. There is no national narrative. In the absence of national narrative, people provide their own narratives, which are often divisive. The problem is to understand it and explain it. A problem understood, explained, and collectively owned is a problem half solved.
The Vice President calls out identity politics and restates the need to oppose all seeking to gain from Nigeria's disintegration.
We must recognize the ways in which we perpetuate institutional discrimination and cause people to see their identities as weapons for procuring opportunity, often at the expense of others. We see this whenever Nigerians are denied opportunity on the basis of their state of origin or because they are non-indigents. The classification of Nigerians as indigents and non-indigents is a form of apartheid and contradicts our declared aspirations towards equality and unity.
A resonating thought among all speakers at today's event is the fact that Nigerians do not hate each other. True Nigerians believe in their potential and are ever hopeful. The political will, however, to ensure that this cohesion is achieved is what is the crux of the matter. Criminals should be treated as criminals, and the victims of such criminal acts be given the closure that they need for the country to develop. Kayla Magwa, Channels Television News.
Welcome back, well, Mr. Macri. One wonders, those kind of reports, I mean, they had very interesting conversation there, but you just kind of ask, I mean, just as the Sultan was asking there, don't we have proactive intelligence? He said he's a military man, he knows what he's talking about. In this case, for instance, what do you think we must be seen to be or we must do so that we're seen to be walking the talk? Talks, for instance, the kinds that took place at that social cohesion survey.
I personally think that we are very reactive to whatever is happening. If we are very proactive in what is happening, I think even the bandits or whoever they are going to be on edge, because you come to the NDA, kill some people, kidnap some people, and then you go away, and then you comfortably left, and then went to wherever you are hiding, and then start calling for ransom to be paid to you. You know, that means that they've been allowed the space, because I would expect those people to be hunted down. You know, let them be right behind them, so that they will never relax. And then, of course, it is not a rocket science. We need to be on our toes in dealing with these kind of things.
Well, you know, we also looked through a number of submissions. For instance, the governor of Plateau State talking about the kind of solutions, the things, the gaps, the lapses that he's seeing that should be addressed. We recently have heard the Sultan address some of those issues. What is your thoughts about how some of these things play out in terms of identifying these people who are doing these things? For instance, I mean, I don't think the press can just put a name or a tag on any group of people if the authorities or security agencies haven't confirmed some of those. So they have a huge responsibility here. Where you were, for instance, in the Secret Service, what kind of role do you think they have in ensuring that this toga of a quote of unknown gunmen is not just used as a facade and then calling them the wrong names, designating them wrongly, and then perhaps the state not acting as they ought to if they were properly designated?
Yes, I think, thank you for that question. You know, in situations like this, what the security organizations usually do is identification. You must identify the risk that you are facing. And then after identifying those risks, then you should be able to mitigate them. But if you don't properly identify them, then of course you won't know what you're dealing with. I think it has taken too long for us to be talking about unknown gunmen. Have they not arrested any of these unknown gunmen to let them be known? You know, so we have to, you know, expose them. If you don't expose them, they continue operating like that because they feel they are getting even stronger by trying out certain supposedly hardened spaces. You know, so I think we have to re-strategize and then, of course, deal with this thing properly. Identify them, you know, and then, of course, mitigate that particular risk that we are facing.
If I could just ask as a follow-up, do we have I imagine we do have, but just to be sure, do we have a crime database in Nigeria where you have the names of people that have committed crimes, basically the profile as you see in other crimes, but also more importantly, what do we do with that database if we have?
I know that the DSS has its own database, and of course what they do with it is their business. They do a lot of things with their database. And then, of course, remember, they are into national security. Then, of course, police also has its own database. You know, I don't know whether it's automated now because I remember, if you remember what they call CMR, car registration or car registration center or something like that, where all the cars, the data on all cars are listed. Now, all this kind of data should be automated so that even policemen, when they are on patrol or something, should be able to recall quickly on either on a small device in their hand or in their cars. So data, we have a lot of databases in Nigeria, but I don't think whether they are integrated or automated.
It's a big issue. We've seen attempts in the past to try and, you know, will I say, harmonize, that's the word I'm looking for, harmonize all of these databases. And we've also seen stiff resistance on the part of the security agencies who tend to be territorial about what it is that they hold in their custody. I imagine that, you know, some work will be going on in that particular regard. However, I'm very interested in this talk around national cohesion. I imagine that it's also a priority to government. Is the reason why the Vice President will be attending the launch of that particular report. And you heard his words there that sometimes when we elevate this issue of indigenship and ethnicity, you know, it does take the level of apartheid in some instances. It is that serious. So the question is, how do we begin to address this issue in such a way that when a problem occurs in one part of the country, the rest of the country sees it as their problem? For instance, we've had the crisis in the Northeast for a while, and people will argue that it's because the rest of the country perhaps left it to fester or saw it as a problem of the Northeast. Is the reason why we now have what we have in the Northwest. We now see problems in the North Central, and even parts of the Southwest and even the Southeast had its own challenges. How do we begin to rearrange this narrative in such a way that we begin to see each other truly as Nigerians and brothers and sisters?
I think, thank you for that question, because that is the crux of the Nigerian problem. We don't see ourselves as one Nigeria. We see ourselves either Yoruba, Efik, or Kalabari, or Nupe, or whatever. And that is not what Nigeria is supposed to be. So how do we solve it? I think we have to go back to basics. Go back to basics, because I remember very well, if you go back to Nigeria's history, you find out that earlier, when people were voting, you go to Port Harcourt, you will see people, an Igbo man is a mayor, you go to Lagos, you see other people from other areas living and running for election, and existing. But we started, that's why I say that politicians are the ones that created most of this problem. Because when they lose at the center, they go back to the village and they tell their people, they rejected me because I'm a Yoruba man. If I was this and this, they would have taken me. And then that ethnicity now went into our blood system, whereby today, if there is an appointment in the newspapers, the first thing any Nigerian does is to take the paper and mark out how many Hausa people are there, how many Yorubas, how many Igbos, how many, so that they want to know. And at the end of the day, we now deal with that. Oh, all the service chiefs are Hausas, or they are all Northerners. We are not talking of competence anymore. We are now talking ethnicity. Just like the vice president said, the ethnicity problem we have is almost like apartheid, because we now start to hate each other. If the person is not from our place, then the person must be an enemy. And then you start to see regional agitations. We want to form our own country in the east. We want to form the one in the west. So all these things start to happen. Caliphate in the northeast. And they keep on dividing the country into pieces. But I can tell you one thing. We are better off being this one Nigeria than the segments that we are planning to be for ourselves.
Let's wind down this one. I mean, all of those issues you've raised, I mean, you've equally highlighted how some security agencies are beholden to certain political office holders, maybe because they were very instrumental to getting them in those positions in one way or the other. Then there are actions being taken by these terrorists who attempt to divide further perhaps the country, and who knows, security agencies as well. But the thing now is, if we don't want to get to that situation where security agencies or these divisions you spoke about will seep into security agencies, that would be disastrous. How do we prevent this?
Because that's another important thing that we have to look at, And I think we have that level of patriotism there among the security agencies where a criminal is a criminal. And we should start looking at it that way. Because Nigeria should not start defining, oh, this man did this, he's from this place, so nothing is going to happen to him. And the security agencies should also. And I think that's why I'm still talking about some level of independence, whereby if they arrest somebody, no matter where he comes from, should be handled properly. So we shouldn't start looking at this and then seeping into the security system where people will start to, align themselves into one area or the other. The important thing in security is patriotism, whereby you don't you know, you don't see yourself as you're either colorblind or tribal blind, so to say, you know.
All right, then, Mr. Dennis Amakwe, former Assistant Director with the State Security Service. Thank you very much indeed for your time this morning.
Thank you for having me.